It's 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Mike is alone in his office, a converted storage room at the back of his manufacturing facility. Now, on his desk, a leather binder, embossed gold lettering titled 5-Year Strategic Growth Plan. He paid $25,000 for this plan, hired a respected consultant, spent 2 months in planning sessions. The consultant delivered a 47-page document with charts, timelines, financial projections, everything. Mike opens the binder, flips through the pages, and realizes nobody has implemented a single initiative. Not one.
Year 1. Restructure operations.
Status not started.
Year 2. Implement ERP system.
Status. We'll get to it.
Year 3. Expand product line.
Status. In limbo. Mike closes the binder, puts his head in his hands, and asks himself the question that's been haunting him for 6 months. What's the point of having a strategy if no one can execute it? That question, it's not unique to Mike. It's the experience of small and mid-sized business owners right now. They don't have a vision problem. They don't have a product problem. They don't have a market problem. They have an execution problem, and it's killing them. Hello, and welcome back to Small Business, Big AI, the podcast where small business owners stop playing defense and start becoming a technology-enabled superpower. Now, I'm Kim, your host, and if you listened to the last episode, you met Becky, the displaced Big Four consultant, wondering what comes next.
And I'm Hal. So last episode, we walked through the great displacement, what's happening at the Big Four accounting firms and consultancies, why it's permanent, and why Becky isn't a casualty. She's positioned.
And today, we are going to introduce you to Mike. Now, Mike has a problem that Becky is uniquely qualified to solve.
This is part 2 of our 3-part series, The Implementation Gap. We're diving into the crises that's plaguing small and medium-sized businesses, the gap between strategy and execution.
And by the end of this episode, you're going to see why Mike desperately needs Becky and why Becky desperately needs Mike.
The economics work. The skill sets align. The timing is perfect. There's just one problem.
They don't know each other exists.
You shouldn't have to deal with that.
And after today's episode, you won't. So let me properly introduce you to Mike. Mike is 45. He owns Precision Components, LLC, a hypothetical manufacturing company, and it makes custom metal parts of the aerospace and medical device industry.
Annual revenue, $8 million. Employees, 45. Years in business, 12.
Now, on paper, Mike is successful. He's got product market fit, his customers love him, and his quality is impeccable. Revenue has even grown steadily for a decade.
But here's what the revenue numbers don't show. Mike is drowning.
Now, Mike doesn't have an org chart, at least not one that anyone follows. And as for job descriptions, well, they're vague at best because most people's roles have kind of evolved through whoever had the time delegation. And accountability, well, it's a free-for-all. So when something goes wrong, nobody is sure whose job it was to prevent it.
Mike's company doesn't have systems. It has heroic effort. And heroic effort doesn't scale.
You're right, it does not scale. So 2 years ago, Mike did what every smart business owner does when they hit a ceiling. They hire a consultant.
Not just any consultant, a strategy firm. They came in, they interviewed everyone, they ran workshops, they analyzed the market, and they delivered a beautiful 5-year business plan.
It was beautifully bound, professionally designed, full of insights Mike already knew but really couldn't articulate. And the cost, $25,000.
And 2 years later, that plan is gathering dust.
Because Mike has a problem that most consultants don't solve. He doesn't need someone to tell him what's broken. He needs someone to fix it.
Let me give you some data, because Mike isn't alone in this. According to research we compiled from multiple sources, and these numbers are staggering, 90% of small business strategies fail.
90%. Not because the strategy is bad, but because execution fails.
74% of strategic initiatives are never translated into concrete actions. 81% of organizations lack the accountability structures to ensure delivery.
And really, here is the kicker. Small to medium-sized business owners spend 68% of their time firefighting, like dealing with urgent tactical crises, and only 32% of their time on strategic work.
Mike doesn't have a strategy problem. He has an execution infrastructure problem.
And until someone builds that infrastructure for him, well, that $25,000 binder is just expensive decoration. You know, if you're wondering why small business strategies fail at such alarming rates, well, it's rarely about the strategy itself. So, research shows that 90% of SMB strategic initiatives fail due to execution gaps. And the most common barriers? Lack of clear accountability, affecting 81% of organizations. Failure to translate strategy into actionable steps, which hits 74% of businesses, and the absence of dedicated implementation leadership. So it's not a vision problem, it's an execution problem. Quick reminder, if this conversation is hitting close to home and you want details about our LinkedIn event, well, just DM us on LinkedIn. The link is waiting for you in the show notes. So, Hal, let's walk through Mike's 5-year plan, page by page.
Year 1, restructure operations. Goal, create a clear org chart, define roles, implement accountability framework. Timeline, Q1 completion. Owner, Mike and the leadership team.
And status, not started.
Year 2, implement ERP systems. Goal, replace the Frankenstein's monster of Excel spreadsheets with a real enterprise resource planning system. Timeline, Q3, go live. Owner, TBD.
And status on that? We'll get to it.
Year 3, expand product line. Goal, launch 3 new product categories to diversify revenue. Timeline, Q2 launch. Owner, cross-functional team.
And status? In limbo.
Do you see the pattern?
Yeah, so Mike knows what needs to be done, The consultant told him why it needs to be done, but nobody is telling him how, and nobody is doing it.
There's a term for this. Researcher Doug Thorpe calls it the optimist orphan dynamic.
And really, here's how it works. So, phase one is the optimist phase. Strategic planning is seductive, it's exciting, it's visionary. So, you go off site, you whiteboard, you dream big, and you feel like a leader. It releases dopamine. It reinforces your identity as someone who's building something meaningful.
Phase 2, the orphan phase. You come back from the retreat, the daily grind reasserts itself, customer complaints, supplier issues, employee drama, payroll, cash flow.
And the strategic initiatives, well, they become orphans, unknown, under resourced, and forgotten.
Because execution is tedious. It involves conflict, detail work, accountability conversations, repetition. It's not sexy. It doesn't release dopamine.
And in the absence of someone whose job it is to implement, the urgent consumes the important.
Mike's leadership team, they're maxed out. His COO quit 6 months ago and hasn't been replaced. His financial director is drowning in month-end close. His operations manager is fighting fires with equipment that breaks down and the staffing shortages.
And nobody has the bandwidth to be the integrator, the person who owns execution. And so the 5-year plan sits in a binder, perfectly formatted, strategically sound, but completely useless.
So, what exactly is the implementation gap? It's the disconnect between strategic planning and operational execution. Studies show that 74% of strategies are never translated into concrete actions, and 81% of organizations lack the accountability structures needed to ensure delivery. This isn't about lacking good ideas. It's about lacking the infrastructure to execute. That's what kills 90% of strategic initiatives in the SMB space.
Okay, so let me walk you through a day in Mike's life. Now, because this is where the execution gap becomes visceral.
5:30 a.m. Mike's alarm goes off. He checks his phone before his feet even hit the floor.
And here's the message. Subject urgent. Rejected parts from Friday's shipment. A key customer. They're threatening to pull the contract. Mike's day just got hijacked.
8 a.m. Staff meeting. Mike planned to discuss the ERP implementation. Instead, emergency session on the rejected parts.
So 10 a.m. Supplier emails. Raw material costs are increasing 15%, effective immediately. Mike needs to decide, absorb the costs, raise prices, or find a new supplier.
12 p.m. Key employee gives notice. Senior machinist, 10 years with the company, taking a job closer to home. Mike has 30 days to replace someone that's irreplaceable.
2 p.m. Equipment breakdown. CNC machine, the one that does 40% of their high margin work, is down. Repair estimate, $15,000 in 3 days.
5 p.m. Payroll crisis. Accountant flags an issue. Overtime wasn't calculated correctly. Mike needs to approve emergency payment run.
8 o'clock p.m. Mike finally sits down at his desk, opens his laptop, stares at the to-do list titled Strategic Initiatives, Q4 Goals. He closes the laptop, goes home, hasn't touched a single strategic priority all day.
That's not a bad day for Mike. That's every day.
The urgent always beats the important because the urgent is visible, it's loud, it demands immediate response. And the important, it's quiet, it can wait, it doesn't scream.
Until it becomes a crisis.
And by then, it's too late.
So here's Mike's dilemma. He knows he needs to implement the 5-year business plan. He knows the company doesn't scale or can't scale without operational infrastructure. He knows that if he doesn't build systems, he'll be trapped in a whirlwind forever.
But he can't step away from the daily operations long enough to build those systems. And he's drowning in the business, which means he can't work on the business.
He needs someone who can step in, someone who knows how to translate strategy into systems, someone who can own execution while he runs the operation.
He needs what Becky is, a business architect who can build the infrastructure he's missing.
And the irony? Becky thinks nobody wants what she knows how to do.
Yes, but Mike is desperate for exactly what she knows how to do. If you're navigating a transition and want support or clarity, send us a DM on LinkedIn. The link is in the show notes. It's the fastest way to reach us. All right, let's translate Becky's skill set into Mike's language, because here's the disconnect. Becky thinks her Big Four training was just consulting basics, and Mike thinks what she knows is magic.
Let me break this down what Becky learned for 15 years at the Big Four and what Mike desperately needs. Skill number 1, governance frameworks. At her previous company, the company had laid her off. Becky built organizational charts, RACI matrices, decision rights frameworks. She knows how to answer the question, who does what and who decides?
Now, Mike's current org chart is in his head, and it contradicts the org chart in his operation manager's head, and both contradict what actually happens day to day.
Skill number 2, performance management. Becky designed KPI dashboards, balanced scorecards, performance review systems. She knows how to measure what matters and hold people accountable to it.
And Mike's current performance management, well, annual reviews, and nobody really takes them seriously.
Skill number 3, process architecture. Becky documented workflows, wrote SOPs, mapped value streams. She knows how to turn tribal knowledge into scalable systems.
Now, Mike's current process documentation, well, it's in Frank's head, and Frank's been here for 12 years. If Frank leaves, half the institutional knowledge walks out the door with him.
Skill number 4, change management. Becky knows how to get buy-in, manage resistance, drive adoptions of new systems. She's navigated hundreds of change initiatives across dozens of companies.
And Mike's current change management, well, hey team, we're implementing this new thing. Any questions? Followed by passive-aggressive resistance and quiet sabotage.
Skill number 5, implementation rigor. Becky builds project plans, sets milestones, tracks status, reports on progress. She knows how to turn a 47-page strategic plan into a 12-week execution roadmap.
And Mike's current project management, it's let's check in next quarter and see how we're doing. Spoiler, they're not doing.
Now, Here's the translation. At the Big Four consulting firms, these were called service offerings, billable line items on a proposal, corporate jargon.
But to Mike, these aren't buzzwords, they're survival.
Governance equal finally knowing who's responsible for what. Performance management, accountability that actually works. Process architecture, not losing institutional knowledge when someone quits. Change management equals getting the team on board instead of fighting them. Implementation rigor, actually executing the damn plan.
And Becky thinks that this is basic. Mike would pay some serious money for it, though. Someone who can do this.
And here's the tragedy. Becky doesn't see her own value because she's been measuring herself against the Big Four standards.
But Mike doesn't measure value by Big Four standards. He measures value by outcomes. Like, can you stop the bleeding? Can you build the infrastructure? Can you even make the 5-year plan real?
If the answer is yes, you're worth every penny.
In a world where consultants search for their next step, one message can change everything. So DM Kim and Hal on LinkedIn. The link awaits in the show notes. All right, Hal. So now let's kind of talk about the money. So I want you to show us the math.
First, there are the Big Four firms. Duration, 6-month projects. The team typically is one partner that handles the oversight, one senior manager responsible for the day-to-day, 2 analysts that basically do all the grunt work, and the cost, $500,000.
And you know what, Hal? Mike doesn't have $500,000 or, let's say, $500,000 just sitting around.
And even if he did, 6 months from now, the Big Four team leaves, they deliver a binder, maybe some templates, a transition plan.
And then, really, Mike's on his own again.
But there's another option. Hire a full-time COO, salary $180,000 to $220,000. Benefits, taxes, overhead at 30%. All-in costs, $250,000 to $300,000 annually.
For that price, Mike gets someone full-time.
Deep integration with the business, long-term relationship. But here's the problem. Mike's company isn't big enough to justify a $250,000 executive. Not yet. Maybe in 3 years, if the 5-year plan actually gets implemented.
So here's the catch-22. He needs a COO to implement the plan, but he can't afford a COO until the plan is implemented and revenue grows.
Fortunately, there's option 3. Hire Becky as a fractional COO.
So we're looking at a retainer. So actually about $10,000 to $15,000 per month. And then a commitment will be maybe about 20 to 30 hours per week. And so the duration for this project will be really ongoing or as long as Mike needs her.
Let's use $12,000 a month as a baseline and an annual cost of $144,000.
I mean, that's half the cost of a full-time COO and 60% less than a Big Four project.
And here's what Mike gets for the $12,000 a month.
So he gets 15 years of Big Four level expertise. He gets ongoing implementation support, not just a one-time project. He even gets senior level judgment, not a 22-year-old analyst learning on his dime. He gets flexible capacity, scale up or down based on his actual needs. He gets aligned incentives. Becky wins when Mike's business wins.
No benefits package, no office space, no long-term employment risk.
And if the engagement isn't working, well, Mike can end it within, like 30 days' notice. But if it is working, he's got a strategic partner who's invested in his success.
Now let's look at Becky's side. One client at $12,000 a month equals $144,000 annually. Two clients at $10,000 each equals $240,000 annually. And three clients at $10,000 a month each equals $360,000 annually.
So at the Big Four, Becky was making, let's say, roughly about a $180,000 salary. And she worked 60 to 80 hours a week, and the partners kept 70% of the value that she created.
As a fractional executive with three clients, she's making $360,000, working 30 to 40 hours a week, keeping 100% of her value that she creates.
No performance reviews, no utilization targets, no fighting for partnership that was never going to happen.
Just clients, projects, outcomes.
So this isn't Becky settling for less. This is Becky capturing more of the value that she creates.
For anyone wondering how much fractional executives actually charge, the market rates now are pretty well established. Fractional COOs and executives typically charge $150 to $300 per hour, or $8,000 to $20,000 per month on retainer. The pricing makes senior executive expertise accessible to SMBs who simply cannot afford $200,000 plus salaries with benefits, while enabling consultants to earn $240,000 to $360,000 annually by serving 2 to 3 clients simultaneously. It's genuinely win-win economics.
Now, let's talk about what this actually feels like. Because the economics are one thing, but the relationship is what makes this work.
Mike's been burned by consultants before. They came in, ran workshops, delivered a deck, shook hands, left.
And Mike was left holding a binder full of recommendations with no one to help him implement them.
That's transactional consulting.
What Mike needs and what Becky can provide is partnership.
Here's what Mike gets with Becky. Not a deck and a handshake. Ongoing implementation support. Not a 20-year-old analyst reading from a script. 15 years of hard-won experience walking right beside him. Not billable hours and utilization targets. Aligned incentives. Mike wins when results happen, and Becky's reputation is built on outcomes, not hours.
And here's what Becky gets. Not people who take her ideas and say that they did all the work, but direct client trust, her name on the results. And not artificial projects designed to maximize billable hours, but real problems with measurable impact. And not performance reviews and are you partner ready material anxiety, but autonomy. She decides how to solve the problem, no one looking over her shoulder.
This isn't consulting. This is partnership.
So Mike doesn't just get an implementer. He gets a strategic thought partner who's invested in his success.
And Becky doesn't just get a client. She gets to do work she is actually good at, without the corporate BS that made her miserable.
If you're tired, truly tired, you shouldn't have to face this alone. DM Kim and Hal on LinkedIn. You'll find the link in the show notes. Let's get you out of this burnout cycle. All right, Hal, so let's diagnose the connection problem here. So because right now we know that Becky and Mike are maybe about 15 LinkedIn connections apart. So, but actually they might as well be on entirely different planets.
Let's start with Becky's barriers.
All right, barrier number 1 is visibility. So Mike doesn't yet know that fractional COO is even a thing. Now, he's never heard the term. So when he thinks about solving his execution problem, he thinks, I need to hire a full-time COO, which, as we discuss, he can't afford right now.
So he stays stuck.
Now, barrier number 2 is positioning. So Becky's LinkedIn headline says, seeking new opportunities, operations and strategy, ex-Big Four consultant. Well, to Mike, that's going to read as unemployed, desperate, trying to get back into corporate.
It doesn't say, I help manufacturing companies implement strategic plans and build operational infrastructure.
Which is what Mike needs to hear.
Barrier number 3, confidence. Becky's spending her day applying to corporate jobs, director of operations at Fortune 500 companies, senior manager roles at consulting firms.
She's not marketing a practice. She's trying to get rehired into the system that just spit her out.
Barrier number 4, network. Becky's professional network is mostly other consultants and corporate executives. People like her. People in the same boat.
And Mike's network is other manufacturing owners, industry trade groups, and equipment suppliers.
Their networks don't overlap.
So even though Becky is the perfect solution to Mike's problem, he's never going to see her resume.
Now, let's look at Mike's barriers.
Okay, so barrier number 1 for Mike is awareness. So Mike doesn't know that fractional executives exist. So when his CFO mentions, maybe we could hire a fractional COO, Mike asks, well, what's that?
No one in his peer group has done it. He's never seen it in a model. So it doesn't occur to him as an actual solution.
And so now barrier number 2 is trust. So like we said, Mike's been burned by consultants. Like, they talk a good game. They charge a lot. They deliver a binder. And results, well, they can sometimes be a little questionable.
So when someone pitches him on fractional executive services, his guard goes up. Is this just another consultant trying to sell me something that I don't even need?
Right. So then barrier number 3 is discovery. So let's say Mike decides to search for help, and then he types into Google operations consultant for manufacturing.
He gets 47,000 results, SEO optimized websites, agencies, solo practitioners, offshore firms, noise.
Right, noise. And Becky's LinkedIn profile is all the way down on page 11. Therefore, Mike never sees it.
So here's the gap. Becky has the expertise Mike needs. Mike has the budget and the problem.
But the market is broken. They're not connected.
And that's what we're about to fix.
So let me show you how Becky and Mike actually connect, because it's not a job board. It's not a Google search. It's not a cold email from Becky saying, here's my resume.
It's one of 3 scenarios, and all 3 work.
So let me give you scenario number 1. This is what I'm going to call the warm introduction. So Becky reaches out to a former client, someone who worked with her at the Big Four who left for an industry role, let's say that. So she says, Hey, I'm building a fractional executive practice. I'm working with manufacturing companies that are scaling and need operational infrastructure. So, who do you know in your network that has maybe 30 to 100 employees who might be facing implementation challenges?
Her former client thinks for 10 seconds. Actually, I know a guy, Mike, runs a precision manufacturing shop. He's been complaining about execution problems for months.
Boom, intro made. Becky and Mike meet.
Scenario 2, content-led positioning. Becky posts on her LinkedIn, just helped a manufacturing client implement their 5-year strategic plan in 8 months. Here's what we did. Built an org chart, defined accountability, created a 12-week execution roadmap. Result, 1.2 million in operational efficiency gains.
And boom, Mike sees it. He stops scrolling and then he thinks, that's exactly what I need. He clicks her profile and sends a DM. So now let me give you scenario 3. That's strategic outreach. So Becky identifies 10 manufacturing companies in, let's say, the $5 million to $15 million revenue range. Now, she searches them with her AI assistant. She checks their LinkedIn, she reads news articles, studies their growth trajectory, and then she sends Mike a personalized message. Mike, I noticed Precision Components has grown 40% in the last 3 years. Congrats. I'm curious, as you've scaled, have you found it challenging to implement operational systems while managing day-to-day firefighting? I work with manufacturing leaders navigating exactly that tension. If it's useful, I'd be happy to share what's worked for others in your position.
And boom, Mike responds because Becky, with the help of her AI assistant, diagnosed the exact problem.
So, do you notice what all 3 scenarios have in common?
Becky doesn't pitch, she diagnoses.
She doesn't say, here's what I do, here's my background, hire me. She says, here's the problem I solve. Do you have this problem?
And Mike doesn't feel sold to, he feels understood. But here's the question everyone's asking, including Mike. Can Becky really replace an entire Big Four team by herself?
Well, that's what we answer next week in part 3 of our 3-part series, The Sovereign AI Stack.
We're showing you exactly how Becky uses AI to handle the grunt work, the data analysis, the proposal writing, the documentation, the follow-up. So now she can focus on what only she can do.
And that's relationships, judgment, strategic thinking, implementation leadership.
We're walking through a day in the life, what it actually looks like to run a fractional executive practice.
And we are revealing the tech stack, the specific tools, the workflows, the prompts that turn one consultant into a powerhouse.
Because here's the truth, the same AI that displaced Becky from the Big Four, it's about to become her technology-enabled superpower.
That's right. Now that's it for today's episode of Small Business Big AI. Thanks so much for tuning in. Now, if this episode sparked interest or even gave you just a little bit of clarity, I want you to please share it with one other Big Four consultant or small business entrepreneur who might need to hear this message.
And remember to connect with us on LinkedIn or Facebook.
We love hearing your stories, your struggles, your wins, your fears, and your breakthroughs.
Because that's how we all get better together.
Now, until next time, keep embracing change, keep innovating, and remember, The future of your business is bigger than you think. And the steps you take today will shape the legacy you build tomorrow. Now, I'm Kim.
And I'm Hal. And this has been Small Business Big AI.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode.